All right, let's continue. I'd like to mention something. I don't blame you guys for forgetting because, the game doesn't give a crap, but I do, so I'll bring it up again. So Jesse died. Not that the game cared, because, trust me, believe it or not, we're not going to address Jesse whatsoever for the rest of this game. He died. He died. The closest thing we had to the game acknowledging it... The closest thing we had to the game acknowledging was Ellie right after he falls dead going, Jesse. And that's it. She doesn't even scream Jesse. She just goes, Jesse. And that's it. That's the last time the game even bothers mentioning this character.
I think there's that one other line which says, well, Jesse didn't ask to die, I think.
What the... Okay, he didn't ask to die. I failed to realize what has that got to do with anything.
What I'm saying is, I think that's the one other line where Ellie does acknowledge...
Oh, that, yeah, you're right. I forgot about that line. Never mind, Jova's right. Even still, even still, though, they might as well not even like the effect is this. My point still kind of stands because the effect is still the same.
You realize that at the end of the day, Jesse was essentially just a man in a refrigerator, pretty much fridge just for the sake of adding more reason for Ellie to want to kill Abby.
It's like I said,
he's
the only character in this game who actually has some kind of common sense. So of course he had to be killed.
And you know what's weird? It's how lame the deaths of characters we care for are. Joel's death was horribly executed. Jesse's was, Jesse's was like something out of a mob film where, you can have suddenly abrupt deaths. The difference is that that's more of a mob film. It's to be expected there. And yes, I know realistically some people can just die with little fanfare, but that's not a good way to treat your characters.
It's like one of those cases where some people will argue, well, there's no meaningful deaths in life, man. Sometimes there are. Those are stories people tell, called movies and books and even games,
May I remind you, we play games and watch movies for a sense of escapism. Even for the more realistic stuff, you can go a bit more dramatic. Don't get me wrong, it can get silly sometimes. But I don't think giving characters that we liked actual good deaths would be something that we'd complain about.
Again, the first game did this. And literally nobody... have you ever seen anyone complain about Tess's death in the first game? No, nobody does, because it's a really good death.
Yeah.
If I look hard enough, there might be somebody.
Okay. Even still, in the realms of somebody who might complain about her death, they'll still say that she was actually treated proper like a character. Sure, some people may lament the fact that, it's a shame that she didn't get to stick around as much, but she at least still got to go out as awesome as possible. Again, Joel's death is now pretty much a living meme. So a meme for golf.
So yeah, this car, or Seraphite if you prefer, was caught off guard by a prophet's grace. I will die before the corruption. Yeah, basically, he got bit. But fortunately, thanks to his wounds, he's gonna die before he quote unquote becomes a demon. Because from the Seraphites' perspective, the infected are demons.
I love how Abby says, "Yeah, no, you can rot here."
Well, actually, this is actually one of those rare cases where I do agree with Abby because the Seraphites are such evil piles of garbage that not that I like Abby more because of her agreeing with me there. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying this is one of those cases where I am actually sharing Abby's sentiment there.
I think the problem, Pedro, is that this is clearly building up to the whole subversion about how not all the scars are bad with you-know-who.
Yeah.
I'm getting sick of this whole bloody subversion fetish that media seems to be having recently.
Yeah. Trust me, Dwibs, a lot of us are.
Unless if it's something made by Dan Scanlon.
Okay.
Onward, yeah.
Okay, you want to know a movie that did subversion good, provided you're not a comic book fan? Infinity War. To the normal superhero moviegoer, Infinity War was a nice subversion of the normal formula of it.
Comic book fans like me and Jova already knew or at the very least had a very strong idea of what was going to happen, because we already know what's the primary thing that made Thanos like a memorable villain in the comics. But people like Shiro and Dwiz were not at all aware of it. So from their perspective, it was a subversion.
You know, the funny thing about Thanos is, like, even in the comics, he was pretty subversive. Yeah, you have the whole Infinity Gauntlet storyline where he kills half of life off just to try and impress death, but after the events of that story, he really does, well, I wouldn't say completely atone, but he becomes something more of a heroic figure, ironically, in its sequel, Infinity War. Yeah, Infinity War, the comic, is a sequel to Infinity Gauntlet.
You know what I loved?
You know, this whole it's like I just said, this whole subversion thing could end up spiraling out of control if we're not careful. I mean, what's going to happen next? In Death Stranding 2, we only see the main character of the first game for 2 minutes, and then he randomly falls through a sinkhole and dies because, you didn't see that coming, did you?
Remember, Dwibs, the Metal Gear Solid 2 was actually a demonstration of how Kojima knows how to subvert honest expectations in a way that actually makes sense.
And that was back in 2001.
Well, Kojima is the guy who has always been ahead of his time. Oh, shit.
Oh, wow. Totally didn't see that coming.
Anyway, you know one thing that I loved about the marketing of Infinity War, now that you bring it up? They had these little commercial clips saying Thanos demands your silence, whereas people like me and Joe were all like, oh ho ho ho, you know, and whereas people like Shiro and Dwiz were all like, okay, you know, and me and Joe were all like, well, no, I'm not saying anything. Thanos demands my silence. Sorry, guys.
Pretty much. Anyway, the subversion factor, like I said before, it's like a medical drug here and there. It's not inherently bad, but because it's been abused, snorted, and pretty much forced so much, it has become a bad influence more often than not.
That subversion thing is what made me lose interest in watching I Want to Eat Your Pancreas.
You're telling me that even that one fell into the subversion trap?
Yeah, it is not what the name implies.
Honestly,
I know. I get an idea there, but you know, I mean,
should I explain?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay, spoiler warning for folks who might not have heard about it. By the way, you know how the main plot of the movie is this girl who has pancreatic cancer, and she wants to live the rest of her life to the fullest as best she can before she dies of said cancer.
Yes.
She gets stabbed to death.
Yes.
Oh.
But it's...
basically, a bit into the movie, there's this bit on the news that they're watching, that there's this random stabber running around town, and a bit later on in the movie, that stabber just happens to see the girl suffering from pancreatic cancer, and stabs her to death.
It's like in No Country for Old Men, where Llewellyn keeps running away from Anton, who wants to kill him and steal his money throughout the entire movie, and then Llewellyn gets randomly killed by Mexicans. Like, what? Like,
sure.
Again.
So what was the point of the cancer then if she dies of being stabbed?
Just because something happens in real life, that doesn't mean it makes for a good story.
That'd be like if in it'd be like if in Ni no Kuni 1, when the mum's ill, but instead of dying of
the actual illness,
she gets run over by a car.
Okay. I've actually seen an example of that done well in Red Dead Redemption 2. Essentially, your player character is dying of tuberculosis. That said, if you get a bad ending, he can end up getting shot. The difference is like, well, let's just say if you get the bad ending, it's because of your actions in the game that he gets shot, and somewhat does work kind of thematically. Whereas, per se, if you get the good ending, he succumbs to the disease, yes, but gets something of a rather more touching ending, you know, as is suggested here. So I ask, what is the purpose of there being a random stabbing? Is it to show that, oh, life is so unfair even to people who already have?
It's called, I believe TV Tropes calls it Diabolicus Ex Machina.
Oh, God. some of the worst bouts of subversion. But, I mean, I just
the point, the moral here is watch Infinity War, watch Monsters University, and onwards. That was our
Diabolus Ex Machina.
Those are stories that actually understand that art.
I've said it before and I'll say it again. It's gotten to the case where it's more subversive to not do the obviously subversive action. It's how bad it's gotten.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, but don't you see, guys? I subverted your expectations. Sure, it may have been less than what your expectations were, but I subverted them. I surprised you with a terrible story.
Well, Jova, it's kind of like, it reminds me of the tagline for the marketing of Mortal Kombat Annihilation. To destroy all expectations.
Oh, God.
Destroy all expectations. Well, which is interesting because back in the day, the first Mortal Kombat was generally liked. So it definitely destroyed expectations. I guess.
What we're trying to say, folks, is that this game is yet another in a long-running case of bouts that just because they're subverting things, they're clever, when in reality, they just look silly for it, and not in the good way. Again, how do you choke out a zombie?
Remember, Jova, these are runners, so technically they still use their lungs, so they can be strangled.
Wasn't it kind of implied, though, that at that point they sort of get their breathing stuff from the spores at that point?
Not really, no.
It's so unclear. I know you definitely wouldn't be able to do that in Resident Evil, even with the more humanoid zombies.
You can't do the clickers, though. It's when their head starts getting, because when the fungus starts growing, that's when they become a lot tougher. A lot harder to their skin gets harder because of the fungus. That's when you cannot longer strangle them. But when they're still in the runner stage, since they still have human necks, they can still be strangled.
And okay, out of all the things in the story, I suppose runners being able to be strangled isn't the dumbest thing.
I think I'm about to demonstrate that, actually. Hold on. See? Notice that with a clicker, I have to shiv it, aka stab it with a knife. So I can't just use my bare arms, I have to use an actual weapon to kill the clicker. So there we go, Jova. That's the game's way of showing you how it works, I guess.
If I recall correctly, I think knives don't break as easily in the first Last of Us game in this game.
In this game, they make the shivs stronger, yes. However, you have to get upgrades from the skill tree in order to get to that point. So at the beginning of the game, you do have shivs that work just like in the first game, where you use one of your improved shivs and it will break when you use it once. However, there's a skill in the skill tree that allows you to craft stronger shivs that can be used twice.
Mm-hmm.
My guess is it was because some people did think that it was a bit too much for the shivs to always break with only one use. So I'm guessing this was a result of fan feedback.
I guess, hell, even in real life, shivs wouldn't always break from just one hit.
Well, there you go then. Now it lasts 2. So, improvement.
Lord knows, we gotta calculate all the improvements this game has because, well, it's kind of batting 9 and sort of scoring a 2.
Indeed. Oh, look, graffiti. Too bad it's not cool-looking graffiti. It's just generic graffiti. The first game had cool graffiti.
Now, okay, regarding this game when it came out, okay, one thing that maybe is not entirely this game's fault is okay, you want to tell a dark and depressing story about a world ravaged by a virus. Unfortunately, not a lot of people were in the mood to get such a deeply depressing story, especially given the current epidemic going about.
True, but like you yourself said, that's not the game's fault. This game started development in 2015, 2016. Sorry, 2016. Sorry.
And admittedly, it was kind of forced to come out early. Though, granted, if anything, I'm glad it came out early because Sony were going to try and sit on this one. and let potential employees suffer further for it. In fact, certain action wasn't taken. Go figure.
Mm-hmm.
Now, okay. So, Pedro, honest question. Let's push aside how we feel about Abby as a character. Gameplay-wise, do you think she's more fun to play as than Ellie?
Well, she has better weapons. She is, she's more capable physically, because when you do melee combat with her, the combat has more oomph. So they do take advantage of her muscles, I guess. So there's that.
So let's imagine Abby was a character we actually liked. Then this could be more legit fun.
It could, yes.
But like this, to anyone trying to say, "Oh, we don't like Abby just because she's different and more masculine," I could care the flip less. She looks fun to play as, and really, honestly, that's what I mainly care about in a game. How fun the characters are to play as. The problem is that she's a character I hate, so every time I try to have fun playing as her, it's kind of held back by the fact that she's a terrible person.
But Jova,
yeah, I'm not sure.
but Jova, Ellie did Ellie sacrifice herself to save mankind, or at least claim she was willing to? I don't think so.
Well, gee, it's almost like Ellie was unconscious the entire time and didn't even get a chance to say whether or not she'd want to do it that way.
All right, I was going to make here's the point I was going to make.
Go on.
Whether it's intentional or not, I've never really been a huge fan of favoritism.
Oh no!
I see.
Nobody likes it when people play favorites.
Like I said, Abby is essentially a creator's pet, mind you. Like,
basically, yeah.
Take Total Recall 2012 for example.
uh-huh.
The role the role that Kate Beckinsale's character had in the 2012 movie. Well, in the 1990 movie, the same role. It was. It was effective, but still relatively brief. However, in the 2012 movie, the Kate Beckinsale version of the character got a lot more screen time, and guess who the director was?
Her husband.
Yeah, well, at the time, it was a husband. Now, I'm not saying it was definitely the case, but come on.
I think a good... I got another good example for you for favoritism. Captain Marvel in the MCU. Like, it's clear that Kevin Feige really did want to tout her here. The problem is, like, well, the MCU expects us to really appreciate her, especially by the time of Spider-Man Far From Home with Nick Fury going, "Do not use her name in vain." Problem is, we've not really seen her accomplish much in the grand scheme of things that really shows why supposedly she's supposed to be this character that we all look up to or praise and whatnot. Like,
I do like her movie, but she was off screen.
Stop being so emotional.
Endgame and such. So
yeah. And heck, I mean, even in her own movie, a lot of it is just her trying to get her character back, and well, a lot of it doesn't really feel like it takes much effort on her part. Now, mind you, that doesn't necessarily make her any less of a superhero, but I'll just say this. What really does measure a hero is how much they're willing to do something right in the face of insurmountable odds. Case in point, Superman during events like the death of Superman. You can guess what happens in that storyline here.
Yeah, but Captain Marvel, she probably could have stopped Thanos by tapping his head or something.
Captain Marvel kind of feels like...
To be fair,
I doubt that.
To be fair, Carol did briefly fight Thanos in Endgame, and she did have difficulty taking the glove from him, to be fair.
So she has trouble with that, yet she can blow up a ship with no issue.
Well, a ship is one thing, Thanos is a fucking titan. Trust me, trust me, Titans are... There's a reason why Thanos is such a feared villain in the Marvel Universe.
I can sort of see where Dibs is coming from, though. The problem was how much the MCU tried to hype her up as ZOMG, the most strongest being ever, to the point where you wonder, How is she even having trouble against Thanos? It's definitely a bout of bad marketing of the character.
Yeah.
And I will admit, I'm not that big a fan of the movie either because she's kind of a plank of wood in it.
I'm not.
Don't get me
I'm not big on that either. Some of it was down to the script, but some of it was also down to Brie Larson. As like I said before, to elaborate on my point that I made, one thing that goes throughout the movie from Jude Law's character's perspective, anyway, is that apparently, at least according to them, she's letting her emotions cloud her judgment and her ability to fight. And yet, throughout almost all of those scenes, Brie Larson, if she were any more stoic, she'd be made of stone.
Tell me about it. Like,
Dwebs said that all the more reason for you to like Abby, as Carol never, said that she was willing to give her life for the universe.
God. Okay, it is really
considering how monotone and wooden the character is, all the more reason for you to like Abby. She's so much better than Captain Marvel.
It's funny. A similar reason I don't like Captain Marvel compared to Abby is just like Abby, Captain Marvel is meant to be the new face, one of the new faces of the MCU, mind you, and I just don't buy it. Yes, I get it. Her movie was supposed to come out earlier, but in the time that she has shown up in the MCU, no, I don't buy her as one of the new faces of the MCU. Also, holy cow, that girl that Abby killed looks just like that friend of hers who Ellie killed who was playing the PS Vita. I'm not even kidding. They look so similar.
They look a bit, yeah. She's Asian
I think she looks a bit older, but that's about it.
Same hairstyle, similar hair color, facial structure.
I really get the feeling the new artists that were hired after the mass departure at Naughty Dog are inexperienced, and they didn't have the same. And they didn't have the same. They weren't quite as refined, experienced, and skilled as the other artists that did Uncharted 4.
What? Aren't you going to yell the woman's name?
No. Remember, Jova, the scars.
Right. Yeah. Just fallen because they're a religious cult, and they say that they have fallen because they're cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs.
Well, the idea, Jova, is that they have code whistles. Where they'll listen a specific way if someone's down. They'll whistle a specific way if it's just everything okay. And then the other whistle replies. It's whistle code basically. It's
convenient. So when we're playing as Abby, they don't yell out the mooks names. But when we played as Ellie, I could have sworn they did it.
Well, Jova, that's because Ellie is killing people that are good, whereas Abby's killing these horrible piles of shit. So of course, you don't have to worry about Abby killing these people. They're evil. So Abby's just doing the world a favor by getting us rid of these people, don't you see?
Here's the problem, Pedro. We later get that plot detail that not all of the Scars are terrible people, which...
That's the thing, Jova. Okay. Only two of them. Only two of them.
Again, that's part of the issue with the game. The game tries to have its cake and eat it. 1 minute, it's supposedly going for, a gray morality issue where it's unclear who's really the bad guy, and then you just have a cartoonishly evil religious cult.
Mm-hmm.
If they were any more cartoonish, this game might as well have been made with the UbiArt engine.
And again, are we going to ignore all the bad stuff the WLF has done just because they're taking
23, 45, 46,
go to
47.
24 minutes.
All right.
You there?
Okay. Yep.
Okay, just wait for a few seconds.
All right, and
3, 2, 1, go.
There you go.
But yeah, like I said, are we going to ignore how the WLF have been doing some pretty terrible stuff themselves? Except, they've been taking care of the children. It's not like the religious cult might also be taking in children as well.
Well, actually, Jova, we already know that they'll flat out kill children who don't agree with the religion.
I know, but all the same, though, it's kind of a case of the pot calling the kettle black, because, yes, maybe the WLF aren't as terrible as the Scars, but the WLF have still done some pretty terrible things, mind you. And don't get me wrong, I get it. sometimes you have to do deplorable things in times of war here and there. World War II would like to say hello to that. The problem is that it doesn't feel like the game ever acknowledges it until it's convenient for the narrative. Mm-hmm. I'm just saying, don't try to go all holier than thou when you yourself have succumbed to this. You gotta have some bout of self-reflection, which this game terribly lacks.
Indeed. Alright, so basically right now I'm just trying my best to get to the aquarium where Owen is, so we can have a talk with him. Unfortunately, there's a lot of scars in my way, as you can see.
Oh my god, you know what's sad, Pedro?
Yes, Chova?
The scars doing whistles instead of, just giving away their location by yelling the names. That makes it look like the scars are smarter than the WLF.
Mm-hmm. But you'll notice in the subtitles, because the subtitles are, made for deaf people as well. It says alert whistle. It says echoed whistle. So the subtitles help distinguish between the whistling. So yeah, it is kind of a code that they have.
Again, it kind of makes the scars seem smarter than the WLF. Like, how did the WLF not seem to grasp the idea that yelling out like that will give away their location? Like, aren't you supposed to be at war, idiots?
Wouldn't whistling do that too, though?
Whistle
reveals your peers. Well, that's the thing, Dibs. The scars are not. The scars are hunting people. So it's not like they're trying to stay hidden.
Not only that, but
the scars aren't smart.
Okay,
they're not.
Oh, don't get me wrong. The scars in the grand scheme of things are dumb, but so far they come off as smarter than the WLF. Whistling is different. For one thing, you can't always distinguish a voice from whistling here. So, per se, when you hear a voice, you'd probably be able to tell, hey, that's not a part of my platoon, he's probably a bad guy, and track him or her down. Also, whistling can sometimes be disguised as like bird calls or, certain animal noises here and there too. It's not perfect, but it's better than just yelling out.
I think it's important to establish that the whole Sam no thing is when we kill one of the WLF, whereas the whistling in here is meant specifically for the purpose of communication between the scars. Like a typical thing, it is very wise to do. When you're just doing rounds and just while you're guarding someplace and you're circling between, you have this specific perimeter that you're always circling through, to make always guarding, and you keep going back and forth and making sure there's nobody around since the last time you did the cycle. It's always a good idea for there two people who are near each other during those rounds to communicate between each other, just to make sure everything is okay. Like everything good on your end? Yeah, it's fine. Just to make sure, because that way, if someone manages to silently tackle one of those two people, the other one will say, "Hey, you fine?" And then there's no response, and there you go. That alerts that person. So it's part of how these kinds of things tend to work. It's important to have communication, and the whistling is part of this. They have whistling and then a whistle response as a way of doing that without words. But it boils down to the same thing.
They know. Oh god.
The WLF still do this as well in words. You could see this throughout Ellie's campaign. The problem is, of course, primarily the fact that they scream the name. That is the unnecessary part.
Like, here's the thing. It's like the scars realize, hey, there's a time to mourn, but we're still in the battle lines here, so stay professional until the job is done.
Maybe that's what Ellie was thinking when she only said Jesse, and that's it. But at the same time, the game barely even bringing up the characters since then. It's just...
Okay, look. I could get, Jesse's death right there in the moment being something quick because for the sake of pragmatism. But like Pedro said, subsequently, we won't even really reflect that much on Jesse's death until... Not at all, actually. One scene. Again, that's
the thing, Jova. I'm not going to count that line as reflecting. Sorry. That's not
fair enough. Don't get me wrong. in a sense, I agree with you. I'm just saying, for those who may want to point it out, yes, he technically is brought up again. But like I said, it's more just a cheap means of motivating Ellie further for revenge.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like I said, the scars so far come off as smarter than the WLF, which is kind of a bad thing.
Well, considering they aren't all that much smarter anyway.
Again, they're supposed to be a dumb religious cult and all that. And, okay, look, I get it. Maybe in an apocalypse, there would be some people crazy enough to evolve into religious fanaticism. Fine, fair enough. But am I the only one who feels like the scars kind of just come out of nowhere, seeing as how I don't think we ever got so much as a hint of a group this insane? Not only that, but in an apocalypse setting like this, shouldn't they set some stuff aside to realize, okay, we may have our certain religion here, but there may be some stuff we need to give on since, resources are as scarce as they are.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
I don't know. I mean, it's something that I realize could maybe happen, but the game doesn't really feel like it did a good enough job building up to it. Why do I bring this up? Because the original Last of Us actually went to good lengths to show how certain factions could come to be the way they were. Especially with David and his group of cannibals.
Wow, look at that, Libs. You want to talk about the necessary swearing? Guys, check this. Abby, while using a medical kit on herself, says, fuck. Fuck, I'm putting a bandage on myself.
That's really silly. I mean, that's like
a lot. I don't fucking know.
That'd be like saying, "Oh fuck, I stepped on a pebble."
Hey Shira, you try it yourself to see how that works. Next time you use your eye drops, try saying fuck. See if see how it feels.
Yeah, I'll see it. That should work better than the drops themselves, I think.
Goodness gracious. See you for the next part.
See ya.